It's just an exciting time to be a football fan right now. It is an exciting time to be a college football fan in particular. I know you guys have been following along with some of the news from EA college football that was coming out over the past 48 to 72 hours. And we're certainly going to give our thoughts here tonight on that new EA college football game in terms of, 40 players that will make up that college football game that's supposed to come out sometime this summer. But it's not going to be just about that here, you guys. We got a lot more going on tonight. We got some crazy stuff happening out of Georgia State right now. We'll definitely talk into that as Georgia State is going to be needing a new head coach. So we'll definitely spend some time trying to figure out where could they possibly go to get themselves a brand new head coach. We are also going to debut our FBS program rankings. I'm not going to rank teams. I'm talking about the overarching program in general. We are going to rank all 134 teams that are going to be a part of the FBS this upcoming season. And we're starting with those bottom 13 teams in the country in terms of where their program stands as of right now. Just so much more happening, which makes you wonder why some people don't think you could talk about college football all year round. Definitely blows my mind. But you know what? You guys are in for an absolute treat here tonight. We got some great things happening here in tonight's podcast. I am recording this on a rainy February 22nd here in the Buckeye State. And I'm glad that you guys are here to join me here tonight. I hope you guys are going to enjoy today's podcast. And to show your appreciation, I would really appreciate it if you do a couple of things for me. Go ahead and smack that like button because it lets me know that you enjoy this podcast. And I truly appreciate that in terms of positive feedback. And also hit that subscribe button as well if you have to be brand new. You see that we are a smaller channel, so you do have a real opportunity to be that A1 since day one. And finally, we are on Twitter. We are actually on Twitter as of a couple of days ago. So that is linked down in the description if you want to give us a follow over on that. Well, they call it X over there. I refuse to acknowledge this X. I'm calling it as Twitter until someone tells me otherwise. So follow me up on Twitter or X if that's something that tickles your pickle. But guys, we have so much going on, so much excitement in the college football world right now. Part of the reason why people are so excited in the college football world, we got a lot going on with EA college football supposed to be coming out this summer. It is the first college football game that is going to be released by a AAA company, I should say, in more than a decade. And you know what? When just seeing all the news comes out just really brings a tear to my eye. It brings an absolute tear to my eye because I remember the last NCAA coming out. I was a sophomore in high school. This was back when there was more of an emphasis on having physical copies versus just a digital copy that you could have on a PS5 or any other gaming system that you choose to use. I remember I was not even 16. I wasn't old enough to drive. I didn't have a job. I had to beg, Mama Hill to come drive me to GameStop so that I can get the newest copy of NCAA 14. And then we saw the stuff happen with the Edo Bandon matter. And it's been a while since we've had a college football game since then. At least one made by a AAA company, I should say. But here we are in 2024. We are at that point where we're just a few months away from EA college football from coming out. And we're starting to get some details. Several details coming out, matter of fact, such as we just found out that all 134 teams at the FBS level are going to be involved in the game. That doesn't sound like big news, but there's been some, I guess I would say hesitation from certain schools, Notre Dame being the most notable in terms of making sure that the college athletes are going to be properly compensated before Notre Dame signs off on having their brand represented in this new college football game. So that was always up in the air, but we now know for sure that yes, we will have all 134 schools in the game. We've also seen some other things that have been included as well, as such as knowing that we're going to have some customization. We're going to have the ability to realign conferences. Maybe we could bring it back to Pac-12. Who knows? Rip to that Pac-12 conference was taken away from us prematurely. Tough world out there, man. Tough times in the West Coast right now. We're thinking of our Pac-12 brethren right now. We also know that the exact details of how players can opt in to EA college football. In an article released by Michael Rothstein earlier today. So for the over 11,000 college football players that are out there and have the opportunity to call themselves high Division I college athletes, there's been an email that's been sent out giving some details on how you can be included in the game. Now, even though all of the teams are going to be in this game, that doesn't mean that you have to opt in. It's completely optional. College athletes do not have to sign off on this if they want to. They could say no for all they care. But if they choose to come into the game, regardless of whether you're a, say, quarterback at USC or a fullback at Iowa, it doesn't matter what position you play, as long as you're on that 85-man roster. And that's also another tidbit to keep in mind as well. In the previous NCAA games, we've only been allowed to have 70 players on your roster at any given time. But with this news from ESPN earlier this morning, we do also know that because it's 85 players, the top 85 players, we know that we will likely have 85 player rosters in EA college football as well, just from, reading those context clues. In addition, in terms of what these players receive, if they choose to opt into the game, it looks like they are going to receive $600 plus a free copy of the game should they choose to opt in. And I think that's really cool, just to be someone that, has worked as hard as they have to be a college football player. We're talking about less than 2% of high school football players even getting an opportunity to participate in college football. And you see them not only make it into college football in the first place, but the highest level of college football, and to see that reward with having your own name and likeness in the game, and you're being compensated for it. I just love it. I love every single moment of this. I'm happy for, particularly that NCAA community, those that have been making college football content, just like I've personally had on a larger channel. I'm not going to, self promo here or anything. If you want to look that up, definitely you can look that up. But I'm not going to give that information here because I want to grow this organically. But it's just cool to see, the college football YouTubers that have been going at it for years now, especially without a game, not knowing if we were ever going to get a game again. To see them as excited, and I'm certainly excited about this, guys. It could be one of those games that really bring that authentic experience and maybe could hold us over to the fall when we have college football games playing in real life once again. It could bring, like I said, man, brings a tear to my eyes. So I'm excited for the EA college football game. I already told one of my coworkers straight up, listen, when this game comes out, because he has a son that plays a lot of Madden and plays like those NCAA games, when this game comes out, you're not going to see me for a little bit. I'm taking some leave around that time, and I'm sure those of you that have been waiting for this to come out for a while and are, of the working age where, you got to go to work, you don't have school or anything like that, but you're going into work, got some bills to pay. This is about us. This is about us, being able to relive some childhood memories of recreating some college football dynasties on a game that's going to come out brand spanking new. So I'm really excited about it, but I'm really curious to see what you guys think about all of the news that's been coming out from EA's college football over the past 48 to 72 hours. I'm definitely curious about it, but I definitely wanted to lead with that because we've just been hearing so much about it. Just today alone, just the news is flying left and right. Shout out to Matt Brown, by the way. Matt Brown EP. If you follow him on Twitter, that's definitely someone that I highly recommend following. He does a very good job of having not only updated news on the game, but also accurate news on the game as well. One of the best in the industry. Definitely am excited for it. Oh, speaking of certain individuals, we do also know that, hey, we're going to have some guys in here that are going to be in this game as part of the voices of EA Sports College Football. Guys like Kirk Herbstreit, Chris Fowler, David Pollock, Jesse Palmer, Kevin Connors. So gonna have a bevy of guys that have already been confirmed. I'm hoping to see that we have multiple broadcast teams. If we have multiple broadcast teams, oh, that would make my heart sing. I would truly appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. Just gotta have to wait and see. A lot of wait and see. Sure, we're gonna get some more information down the line, but I'm excited, man. I'm just absolutely excited for what we got going on right now. It's a great time to be alive. Absolutely great time to be alive. Can't wait until that game comes out. But I'm sure that there are some teams out there that are looking forward to have a coach in the game. And, speaking of coaches, real coaches will not be included in EA College Football at first, could be included in later installments. So they're going to work on that. But one team right there right now is looking for a new head coach, and you'll be really surprised to see what ends up happening. So Georgia State had a head coach. They had continuity at the head coaching position. They had a man by the name of Sean Elliott. Sean Elliott was the head coach at Georgia State for the last 7 years, and he's done a decent job at Georgia State. While he's never led them to a Sun Belt championship or even a Sun Belt title game, this is a man that took over a very young program at Georgia State and brought them to a point of respectability. In his 7 years that he was at Georgia State, this is a man that led them to 5 bowl games, and of those 5 bowl games, he ends up winning 4 of them. So this is someone that maybe didn't lead Georgia State to the top of the G5 by any means, but this is someone that has been able to go forth and really do that respectability, being a respectable group of 5 program down in the Sun Belt Conference. But he's not there anymore. He is no longer there at Georgia State. He is no longer that head coach. As of earlier this month, actually, he is now going to be taking a coaching position at South Carolina. Now, this will actually not be his first stint at South Carolina. He has been at South Carolina recently, because from 2010 to 2016, he was on that South Carolina staff under, I believe it was, Steve Spurrier, if I'm not mistaken, and did a bunch of things while he was at South Carolina the first time around. He was an offensive line coach. He was the co-offensive coordinator for a few years as well. 2015, when Steve Spurrier stepped down, he actually was the interim head coach. It was, that South Carolina team in 2015 was a dumpster fire, ended up being 1-5 as the interim coach, but he was on that South Carolina staff for quite some time. And so he took a 7-year hiatus from South Carolina, and he's going home. He's coming home. He is born and raised in Camden, South Carolina, so it's understandable, but he's not going to South Carolina to be a head coach. He's not even going to South Carolina to be a coordinator, not an offensive coordinator, not a defensive coordinator. No, he's going to be the tight ends coach, and he's going to be, looks like the guards coach, like coaching like interior offensive linemen, from what my understanding is. So big loss for Georgia State. It's tough to lose your coach to a bigger school. It's even tougher when they go to a bigger school and they're taking not even a coordinator position, a positional coaching job in the SEC. So Georgia State now, they need a new head coach, and it's one of the only schools that has a head coach opening at this very moment. So because we are a little bit later into the coaching cycle, we got to go ahead and explore, well, what are we going to do in order to backfill this position? Who do we think is out there that could possibly take the Georgia State job this upcoming season. And, doing some little insert research on that old internet, we found a few names out there that we felt, were intriguing and I think would make some sense in terms of possibly going forth and being that next head coach at Georgia State. So, first of those three guys, we got the current coach of the Birmingham Stallions, Skip Holtz. Now, if that name sounds familiar, that's because I believe his dad is Lou Holtz. So there's a lot of lineage and recognition from the Holtz name. Now, not as good of a coach as his father, but has been through, quite a few stops and has overall posted a winning record at the college level. Granted, this has came with some mixed results as the head coach of various football programs, all of which you would identify as G5 schools, right? So we seen him at UConn in the late 1990s. This was back when UConn was in the FCS, by the way, and actually led FCS to UConn to the FCS playoffs. They ended up losing in the quarterfinals in his final year there. Then he took a long hiatus from college coaching. He ended up being like an assistant head coach and offensive coordinator at South Carolina for a few years. Then after a few years, returned to the head coaching ranks, was at East Carolina in those mid 2000s, led East Carolina to multiple conference titles in Conference USA. Then he went to South Florida, didn't work out at South Florida, ended up being fired. And then his most recent coaching job, he was at Louisiana Tech, led Louisiana Tech to 3 divisional titles, couldn't win a conference title at Louisiana Tech, but he did end up getting fired at the end of 2021 after his team posted a 3-9 record in that first year after the COVID year. And so ever since then, he's been coaching in Birmingham, and he's been a champion with the Birmingham Stallions in the USFL. So it begs the question. Clearly, he knows how to coach, and clearly he knows the experience that it takes to be a head coach at the Group of 5 level. However, a couple things of concerns. Well, one big piece of concern is in those years, those last 3 years at Louisiana Tech, he only posted 1 winning season, and that's when we started to see, the upcoming of NIL, transfer portal being more evident than ever. How does Skip Holtz navigate that if he ends up taking that job? Because when you look at what he did at South Carolina and what he did at Louisiana Tech, both of those cases, between his first year and his last year, he left those programs in a worse spot than what he came in as. So there's some concern there. Granted, he does have general experience with coaching college athletes. I mean, coaching nearly 2 decades at multiple stops could allow him to be insightful on what it takes to, be respectable down in the Group of 5. And Georgia State doesn't need a massive overhaul. They need someone to maintain the ship. And Skip Holtz could be that guy, and it could be a reasonable option because of that, because he has experience and he is coming off of not only winning a USFL championship in the spring league, but also the year before that as well. He is a 2-time defending USFL champion in that spring league. So he knows how to win. And if he can learn from his previous experiences at South Florida and Louisiana Tech, I certainly think he can be successful at Georgia State because he does have the experience of navigating that Group of 5 level. Now, of course, he's not the only option when it comes down to looking at possible head coaching replacements for the Georgia State Panthers. How about we go to someone that's actually coaching right now at the college level, but is currently a special teams coordinator at the Georgia Tech? We got Ricky Brumfield. Now, Ricky Brumfield does not have any head coaching experience. So what makes him special? It's because he's been a special teams coordinator for a long time. Various stops around college football, just looking at the last decade. It's a It's a long coaching career. He's been at Western Kentucky. He's been at UTSA. Spent some time at Virginia, FIU, Georgia Tech being the most recent spot. He's been there for a year now, and helped Brent Pry having that successful year in his first year at Georgia Tech. But why is being a special teams coordinator really important? It's really important because on special teams, you're working with guys that are both on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. So you interact with a lot of different people when you are coaching special teams at any football program, regardless of if it's at the high school or Pee Wee levels or up to college and professionals, which he does have NFL experience, by the way. He's been part of the NFL Minority Coaching Fellowship at multiple stops in his NFL career. So, yes, he does not have any experience with running a program of his own, but he does have experience being a special teams coordinator at multiple spots, and he's also very familiar with the state of Georgia, particularly with that Atlanta area, which is an even more critical piece because, well, this man happens to be his school that he's residing at right now. He is at a school in Atlanta. Georgia State is in Atlanta, guys. So he doesn't even have to move. He literally has to move down the street. Honestly, he just has to move down the street. It's not even that crazy of a move. Ain't that something else right now? So Ricky Brumfield, while he doesn't have that head coaching experience, if he does get a head coaching opportunity, I think he could surprise some people and maybe make some things shake as the new Georgia State head coach. I think he's certainly deserving of that opportunity. And then one more option that is a little bit more under the radar, but definitely deserves some attention as well. How about we go down to the FCS ranks? Jason Simpson. Now, Jason Simpson has been the head coach at UT Martin for a long time. He's been the head coach at UT Martin since 2006. And he's getting to a point where he has his Skyhawks rolling at this point. In the last 3 years alone, he has led UT Martin to conference championships in the last 3 years in that Ohio Valley. And that has not changed since the Ohio Valley and Big South merger in terms of football association. They did that so that they can maintain a bid to the FCS version of the college football playoff. Now, he does not have any experience at the FBS level. He has been to Jacksonville State and Texas State, but this was back when they were not FBS members. But he knows how to run a program, and he knows how to run a program effectively. He has posted a 115-87 record during his time at Tennessee Martin. Plus, he has also spent some time at the FBS during his playing days. In his playing days, he spent a few years playing football in Mississippi State and then also played some baseball at Southern Miss when he decided to transfer as well. So this is a guy that knows what it takes to compete at the highest level of Division I football personally. And while it's a little bit of a wild card, it's a little bit of a long shot, I think Jason Simpson, he would be ready to go forth and compete for an FBS coaching job if he wanted to do so. And that's the big thing, if he wanted to leave. I think because of those connections in the Sun Belt and in the SEC, Georgia State being in that Sun Belt conference, I think this is certainly also a name to watch. We'll see what Georgia State ends up doing at the end of the day, though. We'll see if it's just one of those things where he just ends up signing with or like they end up just designating an interim on the staff or something like that. One other thing of note here is that his son, Ty Simpson, he's a quarterback at the University of Alabama. He was redshirted this past year, but that's his son. He's the one of the quarterbacks at Alabama, one of the backup quarterbacks. So very good football knowledge within that family, and certainly a name to watch out for. But hey, let me know down in that comment section what you guys think. Who do you think Georgia State should go and Graham to be their next head coach for the Georgia State Panthers, a program that, by the way, is just coming off of a bowl win. They won that Idaho Potato Bowl just this past season. Let's go ahead and take a quick drink real fast, though. You don't got to stay hydrated out here. By the way, there's a lot of you guys right now. I'm not joking. There is a lot of you guys right now that are watching the channel right now, but are not subscribed. And it just makes me wonder, what are we doing? What are you waiting on? More than 96% of you guys have not subscribed to the channel. You're already here. Why don't you come back and vibe with us, bro? Like, it all it takes is a couple of seconds. Just hit that subscribe button. That's all I'm asking for you to do. And while you're looking over at that right-hand corner, also go ahead and hit that like button as well. Get it out to more college football fans like yourself that care about college football content, regardless of what time of year it is, regardless of that information. I'm reading the sticky note right now, and I already know it's going to turn into a rant. I feel like it's going to turn into a rant. Because at first, I'm looking at the sticky note. This is kind of what I go off of to, lay out some points for the show tonight, for this podcast. And at first, I was just going to talk about what the NCAA president said about the transfer portal. But it's more than that, isn't it? It's certainly more than that right now, because we've also seen some discussions about expansion of the college football playoff. Now, if you guys have been following at home, the College Football Playoff Committee did recently decide to adopt the 5+7 environment. That being, you're going to have 5 auto bids, one for each of the power conferences, the Power 4, and of course, a group of 5 champion. So essentially, the best group of 5 team that wins their conference will get an automatic bid in to the college football playoff, plus 7 at-large bids. Now, I'm not too surprised at that, because when we saw the news of a 12-team playoff at first, we figured that they would eventually move to a 5+7 format, not because of the disillusion of the Pac-12 right now, but also I had a hard time thinking that the College Football Committee would be okay with 2 group of 5 teams automatically getting into the playoff. And no disrespect to the group of 5. There's some quality football being played in the group of 5. But if there's a second group of 5 team that earns the opportunity, they need to earn it, like Cincinnati did back in 2021. Get in there and go undefeated like a Liberty did. So we had that happen to us. But now the more surprising stuff is they're already discussing expanding the playoff again. So there's been discussions over the past couple of days of the idea of another 2 teams being added to the college football playoff. So instead of having 12 teams in the playoff, you would have 14 teams being included in the playoff instead. If this were to be approved, this is certainly not in stone, but if this were to be approved, it would start in the 2026 season. But it's just blows my mind. It blows my mind completely that we haven't even seen how the 12-team playoff format is going to play out yet. We haven't seen how that's going to have an effect on the regular season, and possibly how conference championships, particularly the teams that lose those conference championships, end up being perceived in this type of playoff format. So we haven't even seen what that's going to do, and they're already talking about moving up to 14 teams, and this is in light of all the conference realignment that's been happening. The SEC is now up to 16 teams. The Big Ten is up to, 18? 18 teams right now. The ACC isn't too far behind. I think they have 16 or 17 teams themselves. Big 12 has 16 as well. So It's an interesting time. It's an interesting time right now. And it goes back to a point that I made in the previous podcast. I'm worried about what's going to happen to these bowl games. I absolutely enjoy bowl season, and I'm sure many of you that are watching it enjoy the bowl season as well, regardless of who ends up playing. That's college football being played, during the holiday season. Like, who can say no to that? Having that good old time. But we've seen already what the effect is going to have on bowl games when the 4-team playoff is being implemented. We've seen what those opt-outs have done to programs like Florida State being a perfect example. Florida State essentially didn't play any starters, and then we really lost what could have been a really exciting game. It ended up being a bloodbath in favor of Georgia. Not that Georgia didn't have opt-outs either, but Florida State was losing a vast majority of their production. Completely changes the context of the game. It completely changed that. So that's been a problem with a 4-team playoff. And I have a feeling that it's going to get worse as we get into the 12-team playoff. And now we haven't even seen what effects that it had moving into this 14-team playoff. And again, it just goes back to what I was extremely concerned about when we expanded. When is college football, when is the leadership of college football going to decide what it wants more? Because I truly feel at this point we can't have a model that has an expanded playoff and has bowl season. And I mean like a comprehensive bowl season. I know other division levels do have bowl games. I know the FCS has the Celebration Bowl. D3 has a couple of bowl games that are being planned as well, but it's not a comprehensive bowl season. They have mainly the playoffs and then maybe like a few bowl games as some side pieces. FBS doesn't have that. The FBS is going to have an extended playoff and they're going to have a comprehensive bowl season to go with it. And it just makes me wonder, when are we going to decide what is going to be more important? If we're going to lean into the college football playoff, let's lean into it completely and adopt a similar system as other as the other branches of college football, FCS, D2, D3. If we want to enjoy a comprehensive bowl season, let's work to actually create incentives so that there's less opt-outs, either for NFL reasons or for transfer portal reasons for these bowl games, so that it's a more enjoyable bowl experience for the viewers and for those that have put in that hard work and determination to experience any form of postseason action in the first place. I think, and listen, I know that we're not going to go back. We're not going to shrink the playoff field. It's not going to happen. The cat is out of the bag. We've opened up Pandora's box. I get it. But I think we really need to stop and ask ourselves, it just because maybe more money is being played and maybe more playoff games are being played, is this truly better for the sport? And thinking of what's truly better for the sport of college football, it goes right into my next point that I have. And future me, we're going to have a little break here. So Charlie Baker has also gone on the record earlier this week talking about his comments on the transfer portal and what's been happening in the transfer portal right now. And what we've seen is that the current NCAA president, he has gone on record the past few days. He is someone that is opposed to making any meaningful changes to the transfer portal right now. Now, he does have his reasons. One that I do have speculative: the NCAA just lost in court, right? The NCAA lost on court recently on this very issue because there was a lawsuit that came in. The NCAA lost that lawsuit, and this allowed certain college basketball players being able to play right away. They were waiting for their waivers to be approved. This also allowed certain college football players to play in their bowl game so that they can come out and they can play in their bowl games as well. It's just intriguing stuff that's happening right now. So I think that's part of the reason. Now, he does also have other reasons as well. He goes and talks about, the state of how, young adults transferring more in general, just more of young adults wanting to be more mobile than maybe past generations. Do they transfer more than, he goes on to say, do they transfer more than they did 10 years ago? Yes, absolutely. Do they transfer more than their peers who aren't student athletes? No. But I think we can agree at some point we got to have some form of regulation. I think regardless of where you stand on this, I think we can agree, whether you agree with NCAA President Charlie Baker or not, I think we can all agree here that the transfer portal is out of control. And I think that there needs to be some regulations in place that both that I hope can be enforced, and also I believe makes sense. We need common sense at the end of the day, right? So one thing that I would look at, if you want to allow players to transfer at any time, that's fine. If we're not going to get back to the two-time transfer policy that was previously in place, where you can transfer a second time, but you need an NCAA waiver. I personally didn't mind that so much. I think that actually made a lot of sense. However, I thought the execution and the enforcement of that waiver, the lack of consistency, that was the issue. And I've talked about this plenty of times, so I won't dive into it too terribly much, or at least I hope not. But I think that was the core issue. It's not that the two-time waiver from the NCAA was a terrible idea. I think the execution and the consistency of it is what more people had an issue with. And with that, if we are going to allow players to transfer anytime they want, we got to at least do a couple of things. One, I think it would make more sense if we move the opening of the transfer portal window to after the season is actually over, and then have it open through spring ball and then close it to shortly after spring ball. So you have 1-2 month opening, 2 to 3 month opening of the transfer portal, or you can have it open from the end of the season. So let's say the national championships played 14th of January. You open it up on the 15th of January, and then you keep it open until about 2 to 3 months before the end of the season. I think that would be better than what we have going on right now, where as of right now, we have the transfer portal opening up after the regular season, but before the start of bowl games and conference championship games. And you have this flooding of guys that are entering the transfer portal. And then now you're sitting back and wondering who is playing, who's going to play in the bowl games, who's not going to play in the bowl games, trying to figure all of that out while also trying to prepare for the bowl game itself. Just would help, I think, create a little bit of relief for our coaches. I don't think that's too much to ask for. Now, those coaches are in a great opportunity. They get a chance to coach football for a living, but we could still make it a little bit easier for those that have that opportunity to coach in college football as well. And then secondarily, let's have better enforcement of holding teams accountable that reach out to players that are on different teams that are not currently in the transfer portal. That's something that the NCAA can do, is hold teams accountable for reaching out to a player on another team that is not even in the transfer portal. We've seen this tampering happen multiple times. Caden Proctor being a perfect example. Iowa, reaching out while he was at Alabama during the course of the season. We've also have seen, Pitt losing out on who's the new receiver that ended up being drafted at USC. Just drawing a blank, but you know who I'm talking about. Pat Narduzzi came out straight out and said, hey, he was tampered with. USC talked to him before he was even in the transfer portal or even considered going into the transfer portal. So it's just stuff like that that I think makes a lot of sense, because if we're going to have this wild west of NIL and transfer portal, let's at least make sure that we play that we make sure everyone is playing by the same rules. I don't think that's a big ask. I don't think it is at all. But hey, we'll see if he ever changes on that. I wouldn't mind seeing that change because regulation in NIL and regulation in the transfer portal, that would be better for our sport. I think in the long term, I truly do believe that. Told you it was going to be a rant. Told you that's probably going to be a rant. I would not. I don't lie to you. And also, I'm never wrong. It's if I'm allegedly wrong, it's because of players, coaches, or officials getting in the way. That's how I always view like sports betting. But uh, that's besides the point. By the way, if there is something that you want to ask me like college football related, regarding like maybe like overs and unders on certain teams or like other college football related questions, leave that down for me down in the comment section, and I will certainly make sure to include that type of stuff in future podcasts. We could have this be a little bit of a mailbag situation. So, let me know down in the comment section if there's something that, you want me to talk about in a future podcast as well. But now we get to the point where this is something that I've been working on for quite some time behind the scenes. So I had a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of backstory. So if anyone here has been watching, like the Late Kick Show with Josh Pate, for example, he's been doing this thing where he ranks not the teams themselves, but the state of the programs. And he's done this for, the power conferences. I know he's done this for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, and the ACC as well. He's done that for all of these conferences thus far. So I saw that and I wanted to take it a step further because I'm not afraid to talk about the group of five or some of these smaller schools that make up this higher level of Division I football. What I wanted to go ahead and do is I wanted to rank the state of these programs from 1 all the way to 134 in terms of where do these programs stand, how good is their programs, not their teams, but their programs. And we're going to power rank them. This is different from the power ratings that we did earlier in the actual college football season when we had the the neutral site favorability type of thing. That's what those power ratings were essentially about. So what we did, we ranked every FBS program from 1 all the way to 134. We account for every FBS program that is going to be playing this highest level of college football at the beginning of the upcoming season in August. And how we did this, we had 3 main factors. Now, the most important factor for me was on-field success. So if you haven't won a lot of games, you're not going to be very highly regarded in this particular list of mine. But we took a look at what you did from the 2019 season to this past college football season and see how have you done on the field in terms of on-field success. However, I will also say this, we understand that not every win is created equal. Like, for example, beating a Power 5 team is different than if you ended up being a Group of 5 team, for example. So I assigned values depending on what type of team you actually beat. So starting at the very bottom, if you beat an FCS team, that's a quarter of a point. If you beat a Group of 5 team, that's half of a win. If you're an FCS team and won a playoff game, that's 3/4 of a win. Power 5 win is considered 1 win. An FBS bowl win outside of the college football playoff, that's 1.5 wins. An FCS national championship, that counts as 2 wins. College football playoff win, that's 3 wins. Winning the national championship, that counts as 4 wins. So not all wins are created equal, but we did take a look at a 5-year period for each individual team that has played, that is joining that's been a part of the FBS ranks or will join the FBS ranks this past season. But it's not the only factor that we look at, because And for exception of very few spots, the margins are very razor thin, right? Very close. So we looked at a couple of other things to differentiate or to kind of settle the difference between various programs to rank one team above the other. I also took a look at continuity at the head coaching position. Do you have, for example, the same head coach from today as you do, say, 5 years ago during that 2019 to this upcoming season timeframe? And also, how is your talent acquisition? Not only in terms of who you are recruiting from the high school ranks, but in the case of these past few years, how are you recruiting in the transfer portal as well? In 2019, 2020, that transfer portal wasn't that as important. That's in the very early stages of things. But 2021 through 2023, that's different. And we looked at what your average rank is on 247 Sports the last 5 years to assess how well you are acquiring talent in the first place. So just a recap, we take a look at on-field success. That is the most important thing. We take a look at talent acquisition, and we also take a look at head coaching stability as well. So without further ado, I'm only going to reveal the teams that are in the bottom 13. So these are going to be teams that are ranked 121 through 134. I'll do 101 through 120 in the next podcast. To me, it's set in stone. And I think right away there's going to be some few surprises, but hear me out. Just hear me out through the whole thing before you type something out in the comment section disagreeing with me, okay? So, without further ado, we're taking a look at 134, who as of right now is the worst college football program in America at the FBS level. And it's not who you think I'm going to go to. So I actually have the Warhawks of Louisiana Monroe as the worst program in college football right now. I'm going to pause for effect because I'm sure you're expecting me to say something else at this 134 spot. Now, they don't have the least amount of wins in the FBS over the past 5 years. Adjusted, Louisiana Monroe has won 6.5 games total over the past 5 seasons. But there's a couple of other things, and UMass and Akron, I'm sure were two teams that you were thinking of in general, but there were two teams out there. There are two other reasons why Louisiana Monroe is at this very bottom. First and foremost, their talent acquisition is just not there. Their average recruiting class the last 5 years has been tracking in the 120s. That is traditionally close to bottom of the barrel in the FBS when it comes to talent acquisition. So they're not winning games on the field. They are not really attracting quality talent into their program, either through the high school ranks or even through the transfer portal as well. And not to mention, they are going to be on their third coach in the last 5 years. You had Matt Vitor that was fired during the COVID season. Terry Bowden was there for a few years. He ends up being fired. And now there's a brand new coach that is in charge. Brian Vincent is going to be the new head coach of Louisiana Monroe. He was hired back on the 5th of December. And Brian Vincent, he's someone that is coming over as the offensive coordinator of New Mexico. And granted, he led the Lobos with national top 20 rankings in red zone offense and rushing offense. But as you'll find out later, New Mexico isn't in that better of a spot themselves. So not a fan of what the Warhawks have been doing as of late. I have ULM at 134. Now, speaking of what we got going on with New Mexico, I do have the Lobos at 133. Now, New Mexico has slightly less wins over the past 5 years, adjusted based off of whether their wins were FCS, Group of 5, Power 5. They have 5.5 wins total over the past 5 years. They have not been to a bowl game in the last 5 years as well. Their last bowl game was back in 2016. I was a freshman in college. Actually, no, I was a sophomore in college. Went to the New Mexico Bowl. They did win that bowl game, but they haven't done anything of note in the last 5 years. They won 4 games last year, which is the most that they won since that 2016 season. They've been a bottom of the barrel team since then in the Mountain West. And not only are they a bottom barrel team, they're also a program that's in the 120s. Actually, this season we identified them as a loser on in high school recruiting. They have signed the worst FBS class in college football. There are several FCS teams, and I think a handful of D2 teams that legitimately, according to 247 Sports, signed better recruiting classes than New Mexico. I need you to think about that. There are teams at lower levels of college football that are recruiting at a higher level than New Mexico. It's tough. They had 2 coaches the last 5 years. Bob Davie, who was relieved of his duties back in 2019. Danny Gonzalez is still there, but he is on the hot seat right now. So very thin ice for Danny Gonzalez. That's why I have New Mexico at 133. Up next is the 132 ranking, and at 132, I do have UTEP. Now, UTEP has had a little bit more on-field success. At least UTEP has been to a bowl game in the last 5 years. However, that head coach that did take them to a bowl game, this was back in 2021, which is their high watermark since 2005. 2005 is the only time where they've won more than, that was the last time they won more than 7 games. They lost that bowl game back in 2021. Other years, 1 win, 3 wins, 5 free. It came out to 8.25 adjusted wins over the past 5 seasons. Now, UTEP is also someone that is in the low 120s. So they're recruiting a little bit better than New Mexico. They're recruiting a little bit better than Louisiana Monroe. That's why they are ahead of both of those teams. They did just fire Dana Dimmel. He's gone, like a girl in a country song. And so they'll have a brand new coach, Scotty Walden, who Scotty Walden is a native Texan. He knows the state of Texas extremely well. He's actually coming over from Austin Peay. He was a head coach at the FCS level, could bring some energy to that program. But until we see that, I have UTEP at 132. Now, moving on to 131. I got the Huskies of UConn at the 131 spot. Right now, UConn, they've only won 6 total games adjusted over the past 5 seasons. And that's even with them making a bowl game back in 2022. They did take a step back, and they had a change at the head coaching position at the last 5 years. Randy Edsall was the coach at UConn for a little bit. He was fired in 2021. Jim Mora is there. He's in his 3rd year as the head coach of UConn, trying to turn things around, but it's been an upfield battle for a team that not only is a basketball school, but it's a program that doesn't necessarily care about its football. That's a big reason why you saw UConn pull out of the American. That's why they have been independent the last few years. Probably would be better served at the FCS, given that all of their other sports are in the Big East. Now, for UConn, again, slightly better in terms of their talent acquisition. They have averaged over the past 5 seasons in the 110s. That does help them out a little bit, but they are not much better than the teams that I've already mentioned. Which now takes us into our top 130. At 130, and I know you guys were waiting for this one to be mentioned. Akron, I do have it 130. Now, Akron, second, they have the second to last in the FBS in the last 5 seasons when it comes to adjusted wins based off of the metrics that I use to track wins, right? They have less than 3 wins in the past 5 years when that's taken into account. They haven't been to a bowl game since 2017, and that was when Terry Bowden was the head coach of Akron. We've seen a couple of different coaches at Akron the past few years. Tom Arf was the coach of Akron for a few years, never won more than 2 games in his time there. Actually got fired mid-season. So then they find Joe Moorhead. He's going into his third year. It's a make or break season. He hasn't won more than 2 games either in his first couple of years as the Akron head coach. But Akron has actually been better than expected when it comes to talent acquisition, though. So Akron is actually recruiting better than UConn. Akron is in the very low 110s, almost in that top 110 over the past 5 years on average. So Akron, they do a little bit better with talent acquisition. They just have to put themselves in a better position to win. Could be a team trending up, but right now I have Akron at 130. I also have UMass at 129 as of right this moment. Now, UMass is a team that constantly gets clowned on, and for good reason. UMass, since they've joined the FBS level, this was, I believe, back in 2012, UMass has not been to a single bowl game. They have not even won 5 games yet at the FBS. But UMass does a good job of talent acquisition. UMass is in the top 110 on average over the past 5 seasons. They do have a little bit more continuity than, say, Louisiana Monroe, for example. They did had Walt Bell, who got fired. Don Brown is still there. He's in his third year, though. It's a make or break. We'll see if UMass has a little bit more successful of a season, but UMass is trending in the right direction, however. One team that I can't say the same thing for is the Temple Owls, who I do have at 128. The Temple Owls, they play in the American Conference, and Temple had some good moments. They actually had a string of 5 years between 2015 and 2019 where they were constantly in bowl games. They even won a bowl game during this time. But ever since Matt Rule left back in 2016, the program has been in a downward spiral. Ron Carey was a coach there for a few years. He's gone. Stan Drayden is still the head coach there for now, but he hasn't been great there. Only 3-9 for both of his seasons. Their talent acquisition also is a little bit better. Their talent acquisition is in the top 100. They have 9 adjusted wins over the past 5 seasons, but Temple is a laughingstock of the American Conference right now, and that's why I have Temple at 128. Now, coming in at 127, I do have Colorado State for right now. Now, Colorado State is trending in an upward direction with Jay Norvell, who is related to, of course, Mike Norvell, who is the head coach at Florida State. Before Jay Norvell, though, there was Steve Aduzio. Steve Aduzio was just not it. Mike Bobo had some good moments there as well, but he was fired at the conclusion of the 2019 season. So Jay Norvell has actually been the third coach at Colorado State in the past 5 years alone. So that's what's really hurting Colorado State. It's that lack of consistent stability at the head coaching position. And if Jay Norvell can't lead Colorado State to a bowl game this upcoming season, you wonder about his job security at the end of next year. Colorado State does have 7.5 adjusted wins, but they do bring in talent pretty well. And they actually did also sign the best player in the state of Colorado in the 2024 recruiting class. So Colorado State is taking upward when it comes to its talent acquisition. They have been averaging in the top 90 over the past 5 recruiting cycles, counting the 2024 recruiting cycle that's been finalized not even a couple of weeks ago with National Signing Day. For now, I have Colorado State at 127, but a good season could see the Colorado State Rams move up a little bit. Another team seeking to move up as well is Florida International out in the Conference USA. FIU, we do have at 126 in terms of best FBS programs in the country. And a lot of it is held back by the last few years of Butch Davis. Butch Davis was down bad, especially his last couple of years. Butch Davis only winning one game in the last 2 years that he was there at FIU really holds this Panthers team back. Now, they are in a good hotbed for talent. FIU, of course, being located not only in Florida, but they are in Miami as well. So that does help them out in recruiting. They are a top 100 recruiting team over the past 5 years. But having those head coaches, that head coach change does hurt them. Mike McIntyre trying to turn things around. He's going into his third year, trying to lead FIU to a bowl game for the first time in his tenure there. He's been 4-8 in both of his first 2 seasons there. Meanwhile, the Panthers have 7 adjusted wins in the past 5 seasons and only 1-7 in the worst conference in college football last year, too. That certainly does not help you. One team that could be trending up but is down towards the bottom of the barrel right now is USF. Now, USF, they went to a bowl game this year. They even won their bowl game in 2023, beating Syracuse. So they might have their guy in Alex Golesh as long as he chooses to be there. But we are looking at things not as much as a projection moving forward, but what have you done in recruiting? What have you done on the field these past 5 seasons? And before that 2023 season, it was bad. It was really bad. Charlie Strong was there, tail end of that, went 4-8, inherited a double-digit win team, Charlie Strong did. And every year that Charlie Strong was there, went downhill. Jeff Scott was brought in after that. He never won more than 2 games in the 3 years he was there. And then Alex Golesh is there. But that's the third coach in 5 years. So the head coaching stability is not there. And of course, they haven't been winning a lot of games the past few years. 7.25 adjusted wins for the USF Bulls in the last 5 seasons. In addition to that, what does save them a little bit is their talent acquisition. Talent acquisition does help USF tremendously in this case. They are in the top 80. They actually did sign the best recruiting class in the group of 5, so trending upward. Alex Golesh gonna have to prove that his first year at USF is not a 1-year fluke kind of thing. But now we get to 124, and we actually get into our very first Power 5 program that is on my list in terms of top programs in the country. At 124, I got Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is at 124. They're like the walk-ons on your football team that are mainly on there to build up the GPA of the team. That's what Vanderbilt has been in the SEC, especially in the last 5 seasons. In the last 5 years, they have not won. They have not been to a bowl game. Clark Lee was kind of close in 2022, but his team did take a step back. They had Derek Mason in the last couple of years in that 2019-2020 timeframe. He was fired. Taj Fit was named an interim. What allows Vanderbilt to not be lower is their talent acquisition. Among these bottom tier teams that we're discussing here today, Vanderbilt actually is the best at talent acquisition. They're tracking outside the top 50 when it comes to talent acquisition, according to 247 Sports. But Vanderbilt has simply not won on the field. They have less than 7 adjusted wins over the last 5 seasons. And as I mentioned earlier, my most important thing is on-field performance. Now, it's not an end-all be-all. Just because you have, say, the most wins in your conference the last 5 years doesn't mean you're the best program in the conference. There's other things that go into it, but that is the most important factor, and that's really the main reason why Vanderbilt is down here at 124. If they've had a bowl win every once in a while, they would be be higher, but that just simply has not happened at all. Jacksonville State, on the other hand, is a newcomer to the FBS. They just played their first FBS season in 2023 and a good debut season for Conference USA. But because they are pretty new, I do have Jacksonville State in the 123 as of right now. Now, Jacksonville State, a good season, but a lot of their wins before this season were all FCS wins, right? So that's what's primarily holding back Jacksonville State right now. Promising future at Jacksonville State, but a couple of things that they need to work on. Well, one, you got to continue to be consistent. You did it 1 year. Can you do it long term? That's what I really want to see. Another thing that I want to see, can you acquire talent at a higher level? I mean, Jacksonville State in the last 5 years has a recruiting ranking average of 158 according to 247 Sports. So you got to recruit at a higher level. And I also want to see if Rick Rodriguez stays a little bit longer. He's not the only coach that has been the head coach at Jacksonville State the last 5 years. John Grass was also there. Rick Rodriguez did take over back in 2021. So if he stays a couple more years, that will help with the coaching stability, and it will also help Jacksonville State move up these rankings. For now, I do have them at 123. Speaking of former FCS schools that have been around recently, I have Kennesaw State at 122. Now, Kennesaw State, what they have been able to go ahead and accomplish, Kennesaw State, yes, this is going to be their first year in the FBS. But in the last 5 years, they've been to the FCS playoffs 2 times. They actually successfully won 2 FCS playoff games. So think of that as, their version of bowl season. They essentially won 2 bowl games, right? So Kennesaw State does have that in their corner. They do also have continuity at the head coaching position. Since the program was founded, not even going to 2019 that we're looking at, we'll go even further back to 2015. Brian Bohannon has been the head coach of Kennesaw State for really since this program was built back in 2015 when they played their first season of college football. So for Kennesaw State, you just got to prove that you can compete with the FBS caliber competition, because they are kind of in a process of they're not carrying the most momentum. They were sub 500 the last couple of years, but their double-digit win seasons in 2019 and 2021 does help build them up to a little bit. And also, you got to prove that you can recruit at a higher level too. Recruit FBS caliber players. Kennesaw State's average recruiting class was 167, but the head coaching stability is why I do have them ahead of Jacksonville State, even though Kennesaw State might not have the same success on the field that Jacksonville State had this past season. And finally, at 121, I do have another American Conference team. I do have the midshipmen of the Naval Academy. Now, Navy was in a bowl game in 2019, won the Liberty Bowl. It was a double-digit win season, and yet they still find themselves down there because what's happened since then has not been good. Navy has fired their head coach since then. They haven't won more than 4 games since that double-digit win season that had Navy ranked in the top 25. They also, and this is not much of a fault of Navy because they can't participate in NIL, they can't participate in the transfer portal, and there's more recruiting restrictions just in general with military academies. So this is not their fault, but they are tracking in the 130s in terms of talent acquisition, their average ranking over the past 5 seasons. Again, not their fault, but Navy just can't acquire the same players that many other schools can grab. And they also, are working in a new head coach. Brian Newberry is moving in to his 2nd season as the head coach of Navy. So for now, I have them at 121. So that's the list for now. 121 for 134. Is there anything that surprises you or maybe disappoints you in that current list? We're going to go through 101 through 120 in the next podcast, but I am interested with what your initial thoughts are as I'm going through these bottom tier schools at the FBS level right now. But speaking of that next podcast, I am getting ready to go ahead and sign off. I hope you enjoyed this entire thing. It's been really amazing to be able to continue to cover college football for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. And if you made it all the way through, dude, you are just a real MVP in my eyes. I would truly appreciate that. But with that being said, if you haven't done so already, hit that like button for me. Get so that not only it shows that you appreciate this podcast, but also gets it out to more college football fans like yourself. Some of you guys that are certainly diehards, I'm assuming that's what you are if you found this channel in the first place. In addition, if you're brand new to the channel and you enjoyed this podcast, an easy way to be able to listen to future ones is hit that subscribe button. Maybe hit that notification bell while we're at it so you can be an A1 since day one, kind of be an OG of this particular college football community. But with that being said, I am going to sign off for today. The sun is about to shine, so we got to spend some time with the dogs and get them outside and just have a good time because it is a nice day when it's not raining here in the Buckeye State. I hope you guys are having a good one as well. Guys, we are less than 6 months away until the start of the next college football season. It's coming. It's coming. You just have to keep fighting one day at a time. But I am your host, Jake, of the Any Given Saturday podcast, signing off, but hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.